Okay, so this video is going to just describe quickly the automation that we just made for a client on the accounting and finances side of their operation regarding any of the big deals that they close for their particular clients. And it just highlights how to link Pandadoc with Xero and a few other bits and bobs. So the whole purpose of this is that our client doesn't want to use Stripe as an integration for this particular deal because certain information needs to follow through based on their systems, and just to make sure that the accounts team as well as the chief of staff and the founder all get the information that they need from the deal when it happens, and it also gets transported into their accounting systems so that accounting can deal with things the way that they need to deal with things. So the way that it works is as follows, and if you see me bopping between back and forth between OBS and this, it's because I'm trying my hardest not to dox my client. So first thing first, we basically watch documents, and this is just going to trigger whenever there is a status change on a document. And if you see inside of the API documentation for Pandadoc, in fact, I can just Google it, right? Pandadoc document statuses. All of the document statuses inside of Pandadoc are as follows. So we have document uploaded, document draft, sent, viewed, waiting approval. Say, for example, there's an individual on the contractor's side that needs to view things. It would enter waiting approval the moment that the AE has sent off the contract. Rejected, approved, waiting, paid, completed, voided, declined. Whenever a document doesn't have a Stripe integration, it always ends up as completed when it's been completed by all recipients. That is when this part of the flow occurs, because the information from this contract is going to get sent into Xero, and Xero is going to do the payment side of things. So if it's a Teams deal, which is this template, then that is the only time that a document will enter this workflow. And if the document is not waiting approval or completed, then what we will do is it won't enter the ZAP either, the operation either. So if the document is completed, which is this one here, document completed, then it will follow through the rest of the steps. So the first step is to download the document. So downloading the document is something that will be used later. The next step is to alert the team, and we just have a sales bot here which says, ta-da, new team deal signed, company name, deal owner, grand total amount, and then added the icon emoji, champagne, and new teams deal. We make sure that we don't unfurl any of the media content or the primarily text-based content, because we don't want to puff up each individual automation. It just looks ugly inside of Slack, so we usually just turn this off and we just hyperlink as hard as we can. There's no need for hyperlinks here because everything is done as needed. And then the first step, I'm not clicking into this because it will dox my client, is to search for the contact, which is just a simple email is the email on, basically searches email contains email from Pandadoc. If it exists, then it goes through this flow. If it doesn't exist, we create it, and then it goes through this flow. The important thing that I wanted to cover really is this part here. So with an array aggregator, and with any array aggregator, what ends up happening is it takes the information from the bundle and export and puts out nothing else after it. Meaning, if this was to get removed and we wanted to aggregate information from here, everything from here would be locked. So, and I'll show you what I mean. So we basically want to turn the pricing table into a line item set for the invoice inside of Xero. And the way that you have to do that so that you can use information moving forward is you have to aggregate on multiple variables that are set by tools. You cannot aggregate by this first step here, because you aggregate by this step here, you lose the whole payload. And losing the whole payload makes it super hard to do anything else moving forward. So if you ever need to aggregate, then you basically need to set multiple variables and then aggregate on the set multiple variables function. And the way that it works is Once you set the variables, which is the pricing table items, you then want to set an iterator. And what it will do is that because there's multiple line items, meaning, say for example, in this team's deal, there's like, 3 or 4 things that are being paid for at once. So there's like a pricing table inside of Pandadoc, which describes all of the features that they are paying for. Each individual feature is like a line in the payload, meaning it starts out. Let me see if I can do this in like notes or something. So what it starts out as a one bundle, and it's like item, and the item will be something like, one, and it will be like the name of the item, and then 2 is the price of the individual unit, and then 3 is the quantity of units. Now, item is again 1, and then what will happen is when it's all in one bundle, it will only shoot off one run of the automation. So basically, if I was to stick this pricing table, I was going to stick this pricing table in without the iterator or the aggregator, it would give me the first line inside of the invoice and nothing else. So what we do is we use an iterator. So there may be like 5 items here, and all 5 items are stuck in one bundle. We use an integrator to turn the array into bundles. So now bundle 1 has everything above here. In fact, it's more like this. Bundle 1 starts like this. Bundle 2 is like this. And it's like item 2, second item. And that way, what ends up happening is we get 5 things. We basically get to split out this. So instead of getting only the first one, it picks up the fact that there's a bunch and then splits it out into a bunch of different bundles. And then we use an array aggregator to basically realign them into the way that we want it to. And we want to basically create, and inside of make, you can create it basically picks up a target structure type, meaning this is what the next step is looking for. Use what we have pulled from the iterator in order to create an array which has all of this information in it. And once you've done that, you now end up with 5 items on the line, and then the invoice can be complete. So that's how the invoice is created. And then this next step is just to send an invoice via the email. Because the individual that has a contact created, you can't create a contact without an email. Because that person already has an email, then you would send an invoice via the email that is attached to the contact ID picked up by this first search function here. And then you would send an email, and this email is particular to the system that these guys want. Basically, whenever somebody gets signed on one of these big deals, the accounts team, chief of staff, and the founder want to see it when it comes through. And they want to see it in their emails, and it needs to be identifiable in their emails. And they also need to double check it because this invoice is already gone. If they want to edit it inside of Xero, they need to catch that before the prospect who's just signed says, wait, this price isn't correct. It doesn't match. So what's happened is this email, and I'm not opening it because it's just going to dox them. This email has this output in it, and this is the document that was signed. So attached to the email is a link to the invoice that was sent via email and the API call which carries the document. So in front of them, when they open up the email, it says new Teams deal signed. Click here to view the invoice inside of Xero. The contract is attached below, and then you can just click the link. It will take you into a new tab to show you the Xero invoice, and then click the attachments and reference them side by side. And you can see if, all right, the discounts that were applied inside of Pandadoc reflect inside of the Xero invoice. The discounts that the number of things inside of each line item reflect what's shown here. And it also shows us what the price is before and after tax, because obviously UK company, VAT, all of that stuff's important. So that is how this flow works. And the massive takeaway is really this step here, because this step will trip up a lot of people. If you have an array that you want to basically use and you don't want to lose the rest of the payload, then you have to set multiple variables first, and then you have to iterate, and then you have to aggregate, and then you get everything that you would need. And then from there, it's just completing the rest of the steps according to the systems that you have outlined or that the client needs outlining. And then jobs are good. And from there, so this is just a little case study based on the individual that we did this for. And again, this is the big work. This is the big change. And there's a lot of other smaller things as well that need to be paid attention to. For example, the fact that when you are creating these, and I'll do this now so you can copy, hopefully this doesn't open anything up. If you just hold shift and click, you can copy and then just paste this whole row again. When you reconnect that to, for example, the router, you need to make sure that the references that you've identified actually point to where they need to point to. So right now, it's currently creating an invoice, sending an invoice via email, but these numbers have changed. Look, 16, 30, 41, 42. You need to make sure that the invoice that is being referenced inside of item 42 is referenced in item 41. And if you've used a search function, i.e. create contacts, if you were to copy this, then what ends up happening is if you are going to add the rest of these steps, you need to make sure that the contact ID that is being pulled into all of these other points, which is going to activate the rest of the workflow based on the contact ID that you're working with, they need to reflect number 44. So contact ID number 4 is present in these. But if you copy all of these over, contact ID 4 will be present in all of these, but contact ID 44 is what you need. And if that isn't prevalent there, then the automation is gonna break. So those are the things to look out for. 1 and then 2. So yeah, if you want to find out any more about some of these automations and how to build these, there should be a link below, which is going to take you somewhere where you can find more information basically.